Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we discuss Jesus, his church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison, and I'll be your host. All right, joining me on today's episode is Blaik Owens from Memphis, Tennessee. She is a transfer student beginning her sophomore year at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, majoring in psychology. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Blaik wants to get her bachelor's degree in education and hopes to get into a SLP master's program. I'm guessing that's speech language pathology.
It is
that correct?
Yes.
Okay. She plays the flute. You should have brought your flute.
I should have. I could have given you like a little solo serenade.
I'm almost tempted to just stop the show right here and have you run get the flute. We'll see. We'll see. If this show begins to just flop and it's all weird, we're gonna stop it and we're gonna do the flute.
Yeah.
All right. So you play the flute. You also play ultimate frisbee.
I do. Yes.
For Chat State.
Yes.
So that's not necessarily like a recreational, like just guys getting together and girls getting together. It's more organized.
Yeah. But also,
it's like a league.
Like, don't take it too seriously, because it's like they're like, say, oh, you don't need any experience. Just if you want to come. So you could absolutely be terrible. And
so there's no tryout. You're not like you didn't try out for.
No.
Like you're not some frisbee whiz.
No.
Okay.
I mean, you don't know that.
Are you good? I've never played ultimate frisbee, so.
I'm decent.
Okay. I'll have to try that out sometimes. All right, so you play the flute, you play ultimate frisbee, not at the same time probably.
I'm a pro athlete.
And you are also an avid reader and you enjoy running.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So those are your kind of two hobbies, pastimes. Blaik, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I have a question. What is the name of the podcast? He gave me no
prep.
Wait
a minute. You're on the podcast show and you don't even know the name of it.
You didn't give me no prep. I didn't know you had a podcast. I didn't know you wrote a book. I'm not being a good fan.
Okay, let's see.
Here.
I open the show with hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the
War.
War.
It on the wall. That's a cool sign.
Yeah.
I like the sign. I'm a fan. And that's the name of your book, right?
That is also the name of my book, which you also did not know I wrote.
Didn't know. I haven't read it. I'm going to read it, though.
Yeah. So to those that are listening, it's so clearly obvious that you are my biggest fan.
I'm like, I was fired from the vice president role of the Craig fan club.
I now understand why. Yeah. Not a good representative.
It's bad.
Yeah. It's okay. I'll let it all slide. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about school.
Yeah.
Because I'm unclear. So your major is psychology, but you want to get your degree in education? Is that like, are you double majoring?
No, I'm graduating with my associate's degree in psychology this May.
Okay.
And then I'm transferring to UTC to get my bachelor's in education. That's just those are just stepping stones to get into the master's program for speech pathology.
Okay.
But I enjoy both subjects, so.
Okay. I have heard a little bit about speech pathology. Pretty good field from what I've heard. Is there a reason why you want to get into that?
Well, I work at the pediatric Bridges Clinic for the Chattanooga Autism Center. I'm an RBT, registered behavior technician. We do therapy with autistic kids, and that's kind of where we have a speech therapist that works with the kids.
Okay.
And I want to specialize in pediatrics with special needs kids. That's the end goal. That's kind of where I started out the career. I've always known I want to work with kids. This just seemed like the best opportunity, and also one of the fields that makes the most money.
So I have not told very many people this. As a matter of fact, this is probably the first time I'm going to say anything about this. When I was a kid, I had a serious stuttering problem.
Really?
Yes, really, really bad. And would that be something that, like today, a speech pathologist would work?
It's just speech therapy. It's the long name for speech therapist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even think that was a thing back when I was a kid.
You didn't have speech therapy? How'd you get over it?
Well, first of all,
was it beaten out of you?
No, I was. Yeah, mom and dad beat it out of me. Stop stuttering. Okay, I'm so sorry. Listen, anybody.
That's so terrible.
Yeah, listen. We probably, if you do stutter, listen. since it did impact me, I understand the pain. But we were in Africa at the time, so there wasn't any kind of
that
like
makes sense. Yeah,
stuff
that
there
changes it a lot.
And they, mom and dad kind of worked with, they're like, slow down, just slow down. And I kind of grew out of it. But I have noticed as an adult that when I get like excited about something, I will sometimes stutter. So I have to like really think about, all right, slow down and think about your words. And so why the flute?
So I started in 8th grade, and it was the prettiest instrument. That is the only reason. And also, now I'm really glad because it doesn't have a reed. Like clarinet, they have a reed. It's a wooden
wood
piece.
thing
You have
on
to,
the mouthpiece. Yeah,
you gotta. It just makes your life so much more miserable. So, but the flute is actually one of the harder instruments to get started on. Once you kind of get the hang of it, it becomes a little more easier. Just because it's like the mouth. You don't stick the instrument in your mouth. You just blow out, and it's also open hole for the keys, which makes it 10 times more difficult to play. So
okay, and you were part of the band program, I'm guessing.
Yeah, 5 years.
Okay, and then you still play, you practice, right?
I play. Yeah, I did it the first year of college, but then I just didn't have enough time to keep up with it.
Okay, when was the last time you played?
Last week. I try to practice pretty consistently because I feel like I spent so much years investing, and I don't want to lose.
Right.
All of it. So.
Okay. And you said it's the pretty instrument, meaning sound, or just you like the looks
Both.
of it?
It's the superior instrument.
Oh, okay.
It is.
All right, a little braggadocious there. Yeah. So we might have some oboe players who would disagree with you. Oboe. I don't even know what an oboe looks like. I just said that. All right, so let's get into the like nuts and bolts of this. I love talking to college students because there's so much stuff here that is relevant to faith and church and the future of the church, and I have a hard time believing that there's a whole lot of people, let's say a majority of the people, that really have a grasp or understand what's going on in college today regarding college students' faith. So there's a clear drift from Christianity among college students, and like those who attended a church in high school, let's say, once they got to college, they just stopped going to church, and many of those college students do not return, and that's one of the key things here that I think a lot of people need to like latch on to, that it's not just about being your typical college student, which is there's some expectation there that if they went to church in high school, once they get to college, it's crazy and it's kind of wild, and there's mom and dad aren't telling you to go to church, so there's the expectation there that a lot of college students probably aren't going to be regular church attenders. Okay, so that is a piece of it, but that has grown exponentially over the last 30 years. So you did have that pocket of college students back 30 years ago who were regular church attenders during high school. They go to college and they stop going. But you had a lot of students that still stayed plugged in basically to their faith while they're in college. Okay, that's changed today. So you have a majority of college students, once they leave their Christian roots and home and the stuff they're involved in, they get to college and they bolt, they're gone, and then they don't come back. That's also kind of new too, where in times past, it wasn't a surprise to have kids leave while they were in college, but a lot of them came back as soon as they started a family, and so we saw them returning to the church. But we're not seeing that anymore. The statistics are showing that they leave while they're in college, and they don't return. Okay. Why do you think that that's happening today?
I think probably one of the biggest reasons is a lot of people don't own their own faith, and it becomes more of like a tradition of like, oh, we go to church on Sunday, and then they don't. I feel like maybe they don't understand why worship is such a big part of your faith if you're going to let it continue to grow. And if you're riding off the backs of someone else's faith, then you don't understand the importance of it, and if it's not yours, why would you keep going?
So the implication there, Blaik, is that, let's go back 30 years, something was happening, let's say, at churches or maybe at home where kids had more of an ownership of their faith. It was their own faith. So when they did come to college, yeah, a few of them did leave, but most of them stay plugged in. So what you're saying now is that a lot of the students that are getting there, they don't have that. They don't have the faith of their own. They were just riding on their parents' faith while they were at home. That seems to be the implication there in that statement. And I don't know. I mean, do you think that that's the case, that parents have dropped the ball maybe, or churches have dropped the ball, or both?
I don't know that it's like one specific group, but I think it could be a lot of examples of like, if in the case it's just a habit of going to church. And maybe when you graduate, I don't think I'm sure there are some, but I feel like the majority of people that, grew up in the church, they didn't think, oh, as soon as I get out of college, I'm never going to church again. It starts with they miss a couple Sundays and it doesn't become a, big deal. And so it's just a lot easier to fall off the train. Also, if they're not plugged into a community where they feel encouraged and like known, it's a lot easier to leave, especially if they have, the long story of like, oh, they go to college, meet bad influences, and then they fall off the wagon, which I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
But also it might start too as if these younger families, if all of the church they get is on Sunday, then if your faith isn't going throughout the week, if there's no religious conversation or talk outside or apart from Sunday, it's like the parents just expect them to get all of their information. A lot of the times I've met people my age and they can't even really tell me exactly what they believe on a theological side. Like, oh, I go to this church because it's what I grew up in, so why would I go to another church? Like, but do you know what your church believes,
Yeah.
That was a lot.
No, I think it's a really good observation, because it's kind of getting back to something has changed. And I think, and again, this isn't about like pointing fingers. It's about like digging and discovering the truth. Like what's actually happening, because this is an important thing to talk about. It's more than just important. I mean, we're talking about like the future of the church, because if you've got the majority of people your age that are leaving when they get to college and they're not coming back, what does the church look like a decade from now or 20 years from now? Unless something changes, that's kind of like it's like
very discouraging.
It is. It's a kind of a nightmare scenario, And I know, I mean, from a biblical standpoint, like the church is not going to fail. Like Jesus has promised, like the church will endure. It's going to stay. But at the same time, it's like we are in a battle. Satan is in this world, and he's trying to influence everybody as best that he can in hopes of destroying the church. Yeah. And if we've got a lot of young people, the majority of young people that seem to be falling away and not coming back, then obviously, we need to be talking about it. We need to be, figuring out what's going on. So to your comment, I think that there's a lot of truth in that. I think that when we stop and we look at that and see what you're seeing, which is your peer group is like they don't really even know what their church is about. It's just it's kind of an afterthought, right?
Well, and a lot of times the topics don't go deeper than, and I don't say this flippantly in that these aren't very serious subjects that you need to study, but when it's constant, it's the only subject that you're studying, like, oh, be kind, love one another. Those are very serious, real topics that need to be taught, but when that's the only discussion that's going on, you're not getting fed anything deeper.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that grounding and understanding, like if you don't understand why you believe what you believe, or if you don't even know what you believe past be a good person, that makes falling away so much easier.
So where, in your opinion, where does that learning need to be taking place? Where and when, I guess?
Bible classes. I understand, sermons, sometimes it's harder to get into really deep topical studies during sermon because you have like half an hour to 45 minutes, and that's not a lot. Also, these subjects, they take the longer, deeper studies. So I guess, better in a class setting. But
Right.
just
There's not a give and take there in a sermon.
Yeah, you don't have opportunity to ask questions. Like, wait.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like maybe too, there's things like if you study what is truth so well, then you don't necessarily have to study error. But I think with that, you do need to be studying what isn't true so that you can recognize it and also have an argument. And I don't feel like people now are being taught how to think through things logically. Just for example, like, oh, these are contradictions in the Bible. Like, well, if you can get to a point where you can prove that the Bible doesn't have any contradictions, then you can logically reason, well, if it appears these two things are contradicting each other, then logically I can say, if I know that there are no contradictions in the Bible, then how can I logically reason through this and understand like context and all that stuff? And I just feel like with a lot of congregations, they're not going deeper into those issues.
Yeah, the skill of critical thinking. And I don't know, I mean, is that something that is being taught in colleges now, or do you see it more as this is what I'm going to teach you, you're just going to have to take it for what it's worth?
I feel like also too in our culture, it's subjective truth.
Yeah.
And when truth is objective, you don't that kind of messes everything up.
Yep.
And when you can't say anything, if you say something that's offensive, then you're immediately just a hateful person.
That is okay. So we're talking about a shift in culture now.
Yes, I think that has a big deal to do with it, because I feel like maybe the culture is you're too afraid, because the Bible is one of the most offensive books in the world, because it tells you that you're wrong and it tells you that you need to change something, and that's offensive.
Oh yeah.
No one wants to be told that they're wrong.
Right. Is that a kind of a pervasive way of thinking in your demographic in college students today on universities?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Yeah. I mean, certainly as a campus minister, I began to see more and more of that as the years went by, that moral objectivity was being tossed out the window. And so many college students were being taught and told that your truth is your truth. So this, moral stuff it depends on the person. If you're okay with it, then it's fine. It's okay. And I don't need to be stepping on your toes saying, actually, no, that's wrong. Right. Because then I'm being intolerant, bigoted. And those are really bad words to be called today. If somebody calls you intolerant, I think that's just like, what?
Yeah.
So,
well, especially like it puts you on the defense if you're trying to have a conversation with someone and then they don't like what they're saying, then they immediately just say, oh, you're hateful. Then the conversation just becomes a defense and you trying to prove why you're not faithful, and it completely shifts from what the original conversation was supposed to be about.
Completely breaks down at that point. Yeah. Okay, so along those same lines, then, what do you see as the biggest challenge to your faith as a college student?
Oh, I think it's maybe not necessarily one specific thing, but many things kind of coming together. That's a hard question.
See, none of my questions were supposed to be hard either. I didn't think that was, it's
no, that's a hard question.
Oh yeah, let me tell you about yesterday and what happened. We talk about a faith challenge.
For me, that I've noticed recently, I'm remote at the clinic. So I'm in office stuff, and I have another job. I work as a barista in the mornings. And the culture there, it's like, as far as looking at these people, they're nice. Yeah. They would, if you asked them for a favor, they'd probably do it. But apart from that, they have absolutely no moral grounding whatsoever. Yeah. And it's difficult when you feel like you're the absolute only one that holds to any kind of moral standard. Especially, I've noticed recently, like, the language that people choose to use, and how I thought that would never be a problem. But when you constantly hear people using profanity in the subject they're discussing, or just, very immoral, it weighs on you.
Yeah.
And then you get to a point where you stop noticing it. And then you're like, oh no, I don't notice it anymore. I've just gotten so desensitized.
Yeah.
And I guess not letting that discourage you too much.
Yeah. I haven't thought about this much until you just started talking about that thing. Because as you were talking, I'm thinking about when I was your age, my peer group, and I wasn't necessarily running around with other, let's just say, Christians or believers. It just, in the course of my day, or working life or whatever it was pretty much, everybody kind of had basically the same moral view. Like, there were moral objective truth. Everybody kind of knew that. And you didn't hear the types of conversations that you can go into any coffee shop right now and sit down and just pick a table with people talking, and you're going to hear stuff that's like, whoa, like, what has happened to, like, just basic, like, Christian moral principles? It seems like that, people just don't do that anymore. And that's here in the South too, where you're more likely to see people perhaps praying over their meal than not. But even here in the South, we've lost, I think, a lot of that. So if you're surrounded by that all the time, and it's like an exception rather than the rule, then I think, when you talk about a person's environment and who you hang around with can just so influence the way you think and change you. I've seen that happen so many times over and over again. And it's like the old adage, how do you boil a frog? You don't throw him into boiling water because he's going to jump right out. You just very slowly desensitize him. You slowly turn up the heat. And it sounds like to me that's kind of the culture within college students today.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not off base.
No.
No. All right. So that for you, what do you like? That's the biggest challenge, and that makes a lot of sense. Biggest challenge to your faith today would be the culture that we're in.
I guess especially I try to more so recently be very aware that I am just as easily influenced as anyone else, because I feel like especially for people who have grown up in the church their entire life, you get very comfortable because you're like, oh, I'm a Christian. I was raised in this. I know my stuff. I got it. Yeah. And then I feel like maybe if you have that attitude, which I have had, it's a lot easier to forget to keep your guard up.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. What about college students in general that are coming from a church background? They have faith. What do you see as maybe just the majority of college students' faith challenge today? What do you see as the biggest struggle?
Maybe for students who haven't found places like the CSC, they don't have people who they feel like they can trust and like be open about with their faith. So for example, like even if you grew up in the church and you even may be faithful in your attendance, it's a lot more intimidating to like openly speak about religious topics or just Jesus in general. It can be very intimidating if you don't feel like anyone's going to have your back. So even for students who might be faithful and raised in the church, if they don't have like that good supportive group, it makes it, I feel like, probably a lot harder.
Yeah, I can see that. Just being able to go back to that group and have that constant grounding, where you've got that strong foundation, that support system that's behind you.
And also the confidence to start talking about it and not being as maybe quiet or meek about showing your faith. Because it's a lot easier, in a classroom setting, in a discussion setting, to just stay quiet.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to stay quiet.
Yeah.
Because then you don't get the judgy looks or like the weird looks or, someone challenging what you say or the comments that you're making. It's a lot easier just to be like, no, I'm just going to keep the peace and I'm not going to say anything.
See, it's hard for people my age to wrap our brains around an environment where you're in a class sitting in college and to like make a remark about a positive remark about Jesus and morality, because even at secular universities 30 years ago, it was pretty much like everybody would agree with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you do that today, I think the majority of students are going to be like,
what?
Who said that? What? She said,
Yeah.
She said like a weird religious fanatic.
Well, I mean, there are very rare times when if I tell someone like, oh, I can't work on Sundays, or I got something on, Wednesday night, or I'm doing a Bible study or whatever, even if I'm not, like preaching at them, they're just like, oh, you go to church? Like every Sunday you go to church?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I try to.
I'm like, wow.
Why? And I'm like, well, that's going to be a longer conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting stuff there. Okay. So I want to shift gears just a little bit, because we talked a little bit about this just as far as growing up in youth programs. So thinking about youth programs at church for high school kids, do you think that there are effective the youth programs are effective in meeting the needs of young people, especially in like planting, because we talked about like your roots, your your upbringing, how so planting roots that are going to keep those kids plugged in to church once they do get to college, once they leave home and get to college. Did you follow all of that? Do I need to repeat the question?
Do I think that it's effective?
Yeah, the current youth, like as a whole, current youth programs that are, taking place in churches across the United States today. Like, do you think? And obviously, you haven't seen every single youth, but I'm talking about in your experience and others that you've talked to, and maybe ones that you know about. Is youth ministry doing all the stuff to keep kids plugged in? And I guess maybe as a follow-up, is that even the job of the youth ministry programs at churches?
You can have, I feel like maybe there's a two-part answer there, because I feel like there are some ministries that are really doing a fabulous job.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the end it comes down to, you can have the best minister in the world who is so on fire, who is giving all of the informations, all of the reasons, all of the answers, and if someone, like, it still goes back to the person if they want to accept it or not.
Yeah.
Because you can't make someone believe it. You can give them all of the answers and all of the reasons, and you can put your all into something and have so much passion. And if they don't want it, then they don't want it. And there's nothing you can do about it, which is really sad.
Right.
But like I said, I think there are some ministries that are probably doing a fabulous job, but maybe, especially with high school, there were not, in the groups that I were a part of, there wasn't a whole lot of discussions about the hard stuff, about the uncomfortable conversations, especially leading up to college. I mean, I have a fabulous mother, and I have really awesome parents that prepared me apart from my youth group, but it's the conversation, because I feel like there are a lot of conversations shied away from, and because they're uncomfortable and no one wants to talk about them. Yeah. But they're real. And also, if you give the reasons behind why you don't choose certain lifestyles, I feel like that would probably help, instead of having the, fun game night. You need that. That's important. But it's also important to study and talk about those uncomfortable topics, because I guarantee you there are so many people going through those things, and they feel like they can't talk about it because, it's bad. And there's not that. I feel like maybe it should strive for youth groups and even college groups. Like, this is a safe haven. You can talk about what you're going through openly, or maybe not so openly. Yeah. But if you need that pace, it's here, and you can talk through it.
Yeah. Okay. So I listened very carefully to what you said, and our pre-show talk.
Yeah.
You were like, you didn't prepare me at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So you did not know that question was coming.
No.
You have not read my book.
No.
You have not listened to this podcast.
No.
Okay.
Is that something you've talked about?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm setting up the listener
Okay.
because you've said some things that I want to bring out, and I just want to make sure the listener knows that I have not prepped you in any way to say this, and this because I am trying to underscore a thing that is not seeming to take, like parents don't want to accept this reality.
Okay.
Youth ministers do not want to accept this reality. And so you said a couple things I want to point out. The first thing is, and you kind of like, you did a drive-by real quick. So if people weren't listening, they would have missed it. So you said you had a great mom, you had parents, and you got that at home.
Yes.
The deep stuff, you got talked to it at home.
Yes.
And one of the things that I talk about as far as a reason why you've got so many kids walking away is that parents have turned over the responsibility of giving their kids the spiritual training at home that they need. They've turned it over to the youth minister who's expected to do that in 1 hour or 2 hours a week.
It's not fair. If you have a Sunday faith or Wednesday night faith, like you just said, there are people who just like, oh, we take our kids to church, that's enough.
Yeah.
But one minister over however many people cannot be responsible for getting to know someone well enough on a deeper level for them to be open to talk about what they're going through. And if you don't have, especially because, high school, you're going through a lot of stuff, lots of changing, a lot of insecurities.
Right.
The likelihood of you opening up is very slim unless you feel like you have that safe place.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. So moms and dads are the primary influencer of their kids, and the youth minister, youth programs should be secondary,
Absolutely.
supplemental to what's going on at home, as a resource to what should be going on at home.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of parents have turned that responsibility solely over to the youth minister because, hey, we pay him. That's what he's supposed to be doing. Or they're an expert. They know the Bible better than I do, so let them do their job. And that, I think, is a huge contributing factor to why we're seeing the decline of kids when they go to college just checking out. The second thing that you said that I want to draw attention to is that the meat of youth programs, that there needs to be deeper stuff. Yes, fun is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is important.
Absolutely.
But that shouldn't be the primary stuff. A youth program shouldn't be about getting together and eating pizza and going to watch a movie or doing whatever, the primary thing should be getting into God's Word, having those deep, meaningful conversations that hopefully are basically taking place at home also. Yes. So those are the two comments that you made that I think are worth people hearing and going like, oh, this came directly from a college student who was not prepped whatsoever for the answer. Okay, good. All right, let's see. As a college student, what are you looking for in a church home while you are away at school?
This is a very basic answer, but community. I'm a member at Central because I'm an SA at the CC.
Yes. Central Church of Christ.
Yes.
400 Vine Street, Chattanooga, Tennessee.
They're great.
Yeah.
One of the things, a lot of churches, been to a lot of churches over the years, been a member of a lot of different Church of Christ. The warmth that Central has, genuinely, it's very impressive. It is one of the very few churches that I have consistently seemed they have been excited. And you can tell that this congregation knows their Bible. And the majority, at least, is not just a Faith on Sunday members. Also, I really, really like that we have a big college group. It sits on the right side of the auditorium, and that's all the college groups. But the amount of members, whether that's like young adult, middle-aged, the elderly group, they make such an effort to come. And so I don't feel like it's Central Congregation and the CSC.
Right.
I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I feel like you could make it that way if you don't put any effort, but even if you didn't put any effort, someone would come and make you feel like a part of the full congregation. Sure. And I also think that's very impressive because I don't know, with other congregation, it's like you have the youth group and then you have maybe a college group and then you got like all the old people and, you know, it's very separate. But these people make an effort. It's just one congregation. Yeah.
I love that you said that. Again, I'll pay you later. No, that is... I think that's one of the critical things. Church leaders talk about this. It's like, what do we need to be doing to not only attract the young people, college students, because, you know, everybody wants young people at their church because it, you know, energizes and it's fine. What do we need to be doing to attract those students, and what do we need to be doing to be keeping them here? And the thing that I hear probably more than anything else is to be intergenerational, to have that that inclusive type of feeling where you feel like you're part of the church, not part of just a campus ministry or part of a youth group, but you're part of the church at large. You feel like you have a place, a home there, and you know, to have that warm, welcoming vibe. And I think that's something that Central has been very intentional about building that. And so I'm glad that that's noticed by you. So thank you for that. So speaking of that, and this is going to be my last question for you, Blaik. What would you, you know, and this is kind of like a, not just Central, but like, because you've been part of several different churches. So I want to bring a little bit of attention to this. Like, what is it about churches when a student comes in? And sorry, my brain is flip-flopping to other things. Okay, so I know the obvious answer is going to be the opposite of what we just talked about, but I don't want to necessarily focus in on the obvious. What is it that church leaders might want to hear about when a college student or a young family or a young person walks in and they are at a church for the first time? They're like, nope, we're not coming back here. Like, are there red flags? Are there things that would be like, no, we're going to go check some other place out?
And you told me not to say the obvious.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I think logically everybody was like, okay, so we can't
friendly.
we can't be unfriendly, we can't be, you know, cold. We need to work to have an inclusive kind of environment. But outside of the obvious stuff, because I think most church leaders recognize that. Now, whether or not they're doing it or not, or being intentional, that's another thing. So for the church leaders listening, hey, you know, guess what? Be intentional about that stuff, right? But aside from that, like, are there major red flags that you would see that would prohibit you from sticking around?
I think you can tell. I don't have like a specific thing, but you can just kind of read the vibe of the room in a sense of like how much people want to be there. And I don't have a good answer for you.
No, you're okay. So hang on a second, because you're definitely onto something here. You're definitely onto something. I don't want to like feed you the answer, but just,
you know, you can tell how. I can't even give you like a specific reason, but you can just tell from a room of how much people want to be there and how much they're invested in it. And also one thing that, this isn't the red flag, but when I came to Central, within the first 2 Sundays that I had gone, even before I was in SA, it was like freshman year of college when I started attending Central, every single elder came up and introduced themselves to me.
Okay.
And that blew my mind.
Yeah. So I want to like maybe articulate. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to articulate something that is subtle that a lot of church leaders struggle with, and like, you know, I wish we could just put our finger on what is it about. So that vibe, that feeling that you get when you go into a church and you feel either it's kind of a cold church or it's a warm and welcoming church, which is related to what we were talking about a little bit. But what that actually looks like when you stand back and you watch is a fellowship. It's church members. you can stand back and you can watch it. They're laughing, they're smiling, they're hugging each other. They're going up to people that are new.
It's not even maybe just only introducing yourself, but like drawing people into conversation.
Exactly.
Like, hey, my name's so-and-so. Oh my goodness, you need to meet them. Maybe sharing a little bit about them. It's just not only just be like, hi, my name is this. Nice to meet you. Hope you come back.
Yeah.
And then awkwardly walking away.
Right.
It's introducing yourself, drawing them into conversation, making them feel seen, and maybe next time, like remembering them. Just subtle things that make people feel wanted.
Right. Makes all the difference.
Huge difference.
Yep. I'm glad that came up because that's such an important thing to be talking about. And it's surprising how many churches don't do that. And I've been to a lot of churches, but the ones that do, man, they stick out. They're like, and I've even made the comment when we were visiting around at different churches. There was a couple in particular. When I got back in the car with my wife, I was like, man, we had a hard time getting out of that church because it wasn't just one person coming up to introduce themselves. I mean, there was a lot of people coming up wanting to know who we are, being genuinely glad that we were there. It's like, so good to have you. And so I think that's one of the things that churches need to focus on, maybe talking about and maybe even like having meetings, like teaching people, you know what? I mean, if a person comes in here and they're new, there needs to be at least 7 people that talk to them, whatever that number is. I just pulled that number out of the air. So yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. I'm so glad that you've made some really astute observations that I think are very helpful. So we're going to wrap things up, and we always wrap things up with the guest reading or quoting, whichever, a passage or verse of their favorite Bible. So you've got something picked out for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my favorite passage, my favorite Bible story is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from Daniel 3 when they, refused to worship Nebuchadnezzar, when they bow down. And you want me to read the verse?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Let me look at it on my phone and then I can read it from the Bible.
Yes.
Because I don't have the verse memorized on which one it is.
And while you're pulling that up, it's just interesting to note that as we're just processing some of the stuff we just talked about, I have talked to some people that get really angry about the younger generation having to go to their phone to read the Bible. And I'm like, what's the big deal there? Like, I mean, it's of all the negative stuff on these devices we have today, a good thing is that we do have the Bible as something that we can access. It's in our back pocket. We can take it everywhere with us. So I encourage having the Bible on your phone.
It might be a respect thing. Like they might think that it.
Because it's not paper.
Right. I don't know. I agree with you, but I'm just like maybe from their perspective that it might be a respect thing.
Listen, okay, so if you're an older person and you're listening to this show, email us at thelionthewayandthewar@gmail.com and let us know what the issue is. If you have an issue with Bibles on the phone, I'd like to know what that is. Maybe we'll talk about that on another show. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. So this is right after, they were brought up and he says, is it true that you refuse to worship? And I think why this is so meaningful to me is because it's like you have these thousands of people that were commanded, and then you have death, and then this was their answer. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Yeah,
that gets back to, just having the bravery to stand up and doesn't matter what culture is saying right now, to stand up and proclaim Jesus as Lord and Savior. Yeah, good thoughts. All right, give us feedback, share, and subscribe. Hit the like button. If you're watching this on YouTube, consider subscribing to that channel, and you'll get updated anytime we post a new podcast, which we try to do every single Friday. Consider becoming a sponsor of the show if that's something that interests you. Today's show is going to be sponsored by Central Church of Christ right here at 400 Vine Street, Chattanooga, Tennessee. we'd love to have you come worship with us. Our Bible study begins at 9:30 Sunday mornings, and worship is at 10:30 on Sunday mornings. And also a shout out to Ministry League. We've got their app right there that you can see. They've got tons of great resources there for parents and youth leaders and ministers, songs and all sorts of stuff. So I think they're over 100,000 downloads now. So we appreciate their sponsorship for this show as well. Until our next podcast of The Lion, the Way, and the War, love one another, be kind to one another. And remember, the creator of the universe loves you so much that he gave his only son for you. Have a blessed day.